unnamed defense liaisons in Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana. Most explosive of all, a list of 12 American nationals flagged by Traore's team as Tier 1 non-uniformed operatives. These weren't aid workers. They were suspected CIA assets, trained in counterinsurgency and psychological operations, posing as civilian contractors. And yet, not a single arrest was made. Traore didn't want a hostage crisis. He didn't want chaos. He wanted the world to see what had been operating in plain sight, under flags of peace, behind smiles and aid logos. When the list was leaked to AES leadership, one general in Mali reportedly muttered, "They've been watching us like a zoo, and now we're kicking the zookeepers out." For years, the region had been a chessboard. Traore had just flipped the entire board over. On the surface, it looked like routine diplomacy. Weeks before the deportation order, General Michael E. Langley, head of US AFRICOM, arrived in West Africa on a stabilization tour. Photos circulated showing him smiling beside military officials, offering assistance for joint training programs and counter-terrorism support. But behind the flashbulbs and scripted handshakes, something else was happening. Langley's meeting with Captain Ibrahim Traore was short, private, and tense. No press allowed, no transcript released. What leaked later from Burkinabe insiders was chilling. Langley reportedly pressured Traore to restore strategic coordination with US forces. He insisted on reopening intelligence channels, resuming joint command exercises, and allowing non-disruptive American presence near AES defense zones. Traore didn't blink. He didn't argue. He just listened and said almost nothing. But when Langley returned to Washington, a classified AFRICOM briefing described Burkina Faso as increasingly uncooperative, warning that Traore may be pivoting dangerously toward hostile states. That was the moment the line was crossed. Burkinabe intelligence detected an uptick in encrypted transmissions between US diplomatic hubs and military contractors in Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire. American operatives who had been dormant began moving, visiting key infrastructure, discreetly coordinating with local contacts. To Traore, it wasn't diplomacy anymore. It was surveillance, intimidation, preparation. So he made a choice. He wouldn't wait for pressure to become sabotage. He wouldn't wait for a coup in disguise. He would move first. The deportation order wasn't just a reaction. It was a message, one aimed squarely at General Langley. And in a rare moment of sarcasm, Traore reportedly told his chief of staff, "Tell the general we appreciated the visit. We just prefer to walk alone now." It wasn't a tweet. It wasn't a press release. It was a covert operation, written in ink and executed with precision. Burkina Faso called it Operation Clean Soil, a full-scale, silent sweep to remove every identified American presence deemed hostile to state security. The plan had been developed in total secrecy by Traore's inner circle, overseen by a joint AES intelligence task force. No public warnings were issued, no embassy alerts were given, because this wasn't meant to provoke, it was meant to purge. At 4 a.m. sharp, Burkina Faso's elite security units mobilized. Dressed in plain clothes and moving in unmarked vehicles, they fanned out across Ouagadougou, Bobo-Dioulasso, and several strategic zones near the borders. Each team carried a sealed packet. Name, photograph, location, role, risk level. Targets included NGO headquarters, contractor compounds, media offices, even 2 luxury hotels rumored to house civilian advisors linked to foreign agencies. But the goal wasn't confrontation. It was containment. Each individual on the list was approached, handed a letter of expulsion, and escorted under armed supervision to pre-cleared evacuation hubs. In most cases, they were allowed 1 suitcase, a mobile phone, and an encrypted wristband for embassy coordination. Within 12 hours, over 600 Americans had been processed for departure. By nightfall, the first military chartered flight took off under AES air escort, bound for Ghana. No one resisted, because everyone realized one thing: Traore was in total control. Simultaneously, border forces were placed on red alert. No re-entry, no rerouting. AES cyber teams cut data links suspected of relaying mission updates to external handlers. By the time Western media caught wind, Operation Clean Soil was already complete, and as Traore reviewed a list of confirmed exits, He circled a name in red and reportedly said, "Let them tell Langley this. Burkina Faso is no longer their playground." The news hit Washington like a sledgehammer. At first, officials at the State Department dismissed the reports. Unconfirmed, they said, exaggerated. But within hours, classified briefings confirmed the worst. Hundreds of American personnel had been expelled from Burkina Faso under presidential orders. The initial reaction? Disbelief. Then fury. A closed-door meeting was immediately held at the Pentagon, led by AFRICOM command staff and key CIA analysts. On the table, drone footage, intercepted AES communications, and internal embassy reports. The consensus inside that room: this wasn't about diplomacy. This was a strike. Langley, now back in DC, was said to be livid. He allegedly warned defense leaders that Traore's move signaled a seismic shift in regional control, one that would weaken America's influence across the entire Sahel corridor. An official memo was drafted within hours, delivered to the US ambassador in Ghana and shared with ECOWAS. The United States views the mass expulsion of its personnel from Burkina Faso as a serious breach of bilateral trust and a dangerous provocation in an already fragile region. Behind the scenes, frantic calls were made to Ivory Coast, Ghana, and Nigeria, all US partners, asking them to help stabilize the narrative. One senior intelligence official reportedly told an African counterpart, "We need to make sure this doesn't become a domino effect." But it was already too late. Across Mali and Niger, AES leaders praised Traore's decision as bold, justified, and historic. Pan-African media painted him as a symbol of resistance, a David standing against a military Goliath. Western media scrambled to reframe the story. But in the streets of Ouagadougou, the people had already decided. He didn't attack the West, he defended Africa. And in Washington, as new sanctions were debated, one chilling reality began to sink in. They no longer had eyes on the ground. Traore had pulled the plug, and now they were flying blind. The United States had expected protest, maybe even condemnation. What it didn't expect was a military alliance standing united, not just in words, but in posture. Within 48 hours of Traore's mass deportation order, the governments of Mali and Niger delivered a thunderous joint statement. "We stand with Burkina Faso. An attack on one of us is an attack on all. No foreign power shall define our sovereignty again." Across West Africa, those words sent chills and clarity. This wasn't an isolated decision by a rogue leader. It was a coordinated message from the Alliance of Sahel States, AES. And that message was simple: the era of foreign control is over. Immediately, the AES Security Council initiated Protocol 02, a rarely activated defense alignment plan that synchronized border surveillance, air defense coordination, and